Jake Morrison sat at the long metal table and tried not to show his anger. The space station meeting room was cold and smelled like recycled air. Across from him, 3 alien species looked down at the humans like they were children asking for. Candy Dot, the Zephyrian Queen speaker, clicked her sharp teeth together. She looked like a giant insect with 4 arms and black eyes that never blinked. Her voice came out like broken glass when she spoke. "Humans think they deserve so much," she said with a laugh that sounded like breaking bones. "Your kind has been in space for only 200 years. We have ruled star systems for 10,000 years. Dr. Lisa Carter shifted in her seat next. To Jake, she had spent months preparing for these talks. Her hands were folded tight on the table, and Jake could see her jaw muscles working. She was a smart woman who knew more about alien cultures than anyone else on Earth, but even she looked tired after 3 months of this treatment. Admiral Ben Rodriguez sat on Jake's other side. His military uniform was neat and clean, but his eyes were hard. He had fought in 3 wars to protect human colonies. Now he had to sit here and listen to aliens tell him that humans were not good enough to be treated as equals. The Valdari representative spoke next. Its body was made of living crystal that changed colors when it talked. The patterns were pretty to look at, but the words were ugly. "Humans are new to this galaxy," it said in a voice like wind chimes. "New species must learn their place. You should be happy we offer you anything at all." The 3rd alien was from the Mortesh. It breathed through gills and had to wear a water suit to survive in the air. Its translator made its voice sound like bubbles popping. "Your people are loud and messy," it said. "You build things that break. You fight wars over small things. Why should we treat you like grown-ups?" Jake had heard all of this before. For 3 months, every human idea had been shot down. Every time they asked for fair treatment, the aliens laughed. Every time they offered to share their technology, the aliens said it was not good enough. The humans had come here with hope. Earth had sent its best people to make peace with the galaxy. They wanted to trade, to learn, to be part of something bigger than just one planet. Instead, they found a galaxy that saw them as pets or slaves. "Let me tell you what we are willing to give you," the Zephyrian said. She pulled out a data pad and read from it like she was ordering food. 3 star systems on the edge of our space. Old systems with used-up planets. You can live there if you want. "And in return?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. "Would be bad. In return, you give us rare metals from your mining operations. You also give us your medical knowledge, and your farming techniques, and your weapons designs. And you promise to never ask for more than we give you." Dr. Carter spoke up for the first time in an hour. "That's not a trade agreement. That's tribute. You're asking us to pay you for the right to exist in space." The 3 aliens looked at each other and made sounds that might have been laughter. The Valdari crystal being flashed bright red, which Jake had learned meant it was amused. "Humans are funny," it said. "You think you can demand things from us. You are one small species with a few dozen worlds. We control thousands of systems. We have weapons that could turn your sun into dust." Admiral Rodriguez finally spoke. His voice was calm and quiet, but Jake could hear the steel underneath. "Are you threatening us?" "Not threatening," the Mortesh bubble voice said. "Just explaining reality. Small fish do not make demands of big fish. They should be grateful when big fish choose not to eat them." Jake felt something break inside his chest. It was not his heart, exactly. It was his faith in the idea that different species could work together as equals. These aliens did not want partners. They wanted servants. He looked at Dr. Carter and Admiral Rodriguez. Both of them were watching him, waiting to see what he would do. In their eyes, he saw the same anger and disappointment he felt. Jake pushed his chair back and stood up slowly. The sound was loud in the quiet room. The alien stopped talking and looked at him with surprise. "We came here 3 months ago," Jake said. His voice was steady, but everyone in the room could hear the anger underneath. "We came here hoping to find friends among the stars. We offered to share our knowledge, our culture, our friendship. We asked only to be treated with respect." The Zephyrian made that broken glass laugh again. "And now you have learned that respect must be earned, not given." "You're right," Jake said. "Respect must be earned, and you have not earned ours." Dr. Carter and Admiral Rodriguez stood up too. Around the room, the other human diplomats and guards began to rise from their seats. The aliens looked confused now. This was not how these meetings usually went. "We reject your terms," Jake said clearly. "All of them. We will not pay tribute to anyone. We will not beg for scraps from your table. If you cannot see us as equals, and we will not waste any more time trying to convince you." He walked toward the door, his team following behind him. The aliens started talking all at once, their voices mixing together in a noise that sounded like a broken machine. "Where are you going?" the Valdari called out. "You cannot just leave. We are not finished talking." Jake stopped at the door and turned around one last time. "Yes, we are," he said. "We are very finished." The door slid shut behind the humans. With a soft hiss, in the meeting room, the 3 alien species looked at each other in confusion. They had dealt with hundreds of younger species over the years. All of them had eventually accepted whatever terms they were offered. None of them had ever just walked away before. Outside in the corridor, Admiral Rodriguez fell into step beside Jake. "What now, Ambassador?" Jake looked out through a window at the stars beyond the station. Somewhere out there was Earth, and all the human colonies scattered across dozens of worlds. "Now we go home, Ben, all of us. And we show these aliens what happens when they underestimate humanity." Dr. Carter was already on her communication device, sending coded messages to Earth. The messages were short and simple, but they would change everything. The galaxy was about to learn that humans did not beg, and they did not stay where they were not wanted. They just walked away. Captain Ryan Sullivan was drinking coffee when the message came through. He almost dropped his cup when he heard the 3 words that every human in space had been trained to recognize. Operation Homebound? Now. Ryan set down his coffee and ran to the bridge of his cargo ship, New Horizon. His crew was already moving before he got there. They had practiced this drill 100 times, but never thought they would actually need to use it. "How long do we have?" asked his first officer, Kate Manning. She was already pulling up the evacuation plans on her screen. 72 hours, Ryan said, reading from the message. "Every human outside Earth's solar system needs to be gone in 3 days." Kate whistled low. "The mining station has 800 people, plus all the equipment and research data. Then we better get started." 3 hours later, Ryan was standing on the surface of Kepler 442c, watching his crew load mining equipment onto transport ships. The planet was ugly, all red rocks and dust storms, but the humans had found valuable metals in the ground. They had been here for 5 years, building a life in this empty place. Now they were tearing it all down. Captain Sullivan called Maria Santos, the station manager. She was a tough woman who had never complained about anything, but now she looked worried. "What about the Zephyrian workers? They're asking questions about why we're packing everything up." Ryan looked across the mining platform, where a group of insect-like aliens were watching the humans with confusion. The Zephyrians had worked alongside humans for 2 years. They were not bad people, just workers trying to make a living. But the orders were clear. "Tell them we got called back to Earth for new assignments," Ryan said. "Don't mention that we're never coming back. They won't understand the equipment removal." Tell them we're upgrading to newer models. It was not a complete lie. The humans were taking technology that the aliens had never seen before. Every piece of human engineering, every computer, every tool that contained human knowledge, all of it had to go. On the other side of the galaxy, Dr. Amy Foster was having the same conversation with herself. She stood in the middle of her laboratory, on Gaia 7, looking at 10 years of work. The planet had been a dead rock when humans arrived. Now it had forests and farms and rivers full of fish. The terraforming machines hummed quietly around her. They had taken 20 years to build and another 15 to get working properly. The aliens had said the technology was impossible. Humans had proved them wrong by turning 5 dead worlds into gardens. Dr. Foster, her assistant, Peter Kim, stood in the doorway with a worried look. The evacuation ships are here, but there's no way we can take all the terraforming equipment. Some of those machines weigh 1,000 tons. Amy looked at the main atmospheric processor. It was the size of a building and had taken 3 years just to assemble. We're not leaving it behind, she said firmly. But how ... we take it apart. Every bolt, every wire, every computer chip. If we built it once, we can build it again. Peter looked at her like she was crazy. That will take months. The evacuation order says 3 days. Amy smiled for the first time since the message arrived. Peter, you don't know humans very well, do you? When we really want to move something, 3 days is plenty of time. She was right. Within hours, demolition teams were swarming over the terraforming equipment like ants. They worked in shifts around the clock, carefully taking apart machines that had taken years to build. Every piece was labeled, packed, and loaded onto waiting. Ships. The aliens on Gaia 7 watched in amazement as the humans dismantled their entire operation. The Mortesh agricultural specialists had been working with humans for 8 years. They had learned to grow food in ways their own people had never imagined. Why are you leaving? Asked Dr. Kethera, the lead Mortesh scientist. Her water suit gurgled as she spoke. We work well together. The food production rates are better than ever. Amy paused in her packing. She liked Dr. Kethara. The alien scientist was smart and curious, and had become something like a friend over the years. I'm sorry, Amy said. The decision came from Earth. All humans are being recalled. But the crops, Dr. Kethara said. Without your soil treatment methods, the yields will drop. Our people on 7 worlds depend on this food. Amy felt a stab of guilt, but she pushed it away. The aliens had made their choice when they decided humans were not worth treating as equals. You have the basic formulas we shared with you, she said. You'll figure out the rest. What Amy did not tell Dr. Kethera was that the formulas were only half the story. The real breakthrough had been in understanding how different soil types reacted to various treatments. That knowledge existed only in human computer databases and human minds. And all of it was leaving with the evacuation ships. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Commander Steve Barnes was overseeing the evacuation of the most important human operation in the galaxy. Titan IX was an asteroid where humans had discovered quantum crystals. These crystals made faster-than-light travel possible. Without them, it took months to travel between star systems instead of days. The aliens had been happy to let humans do the dangerous work of crystal extraction. The mining was hard and required special equipment that only humans had developed. In return, humans got to keep a small portion of the crystals they found. Now, Steve was watching his teams pack up the extraction equipment while alien supervisors stood around looking confused. Commander Barnes, called Supervisor Velinov, a Zephyrian mining official. Your equipment cannot leave this facility. It belongs to the Galactic Mining Consortium. Steve looked at the alien calmly. Actually, it belongs to humans. We built it, we designed it, and we own it. Check your contracts. Velenov's mandibles clicked in anger. But without this equipment, crystal production will stop completely. That sounds like a problem for the Galactic Mining Consortium to solve. Steve watched as the last piece of extraction equipment was loaded onto a transport ship. The mining operation had been running perfectly for 3 years, pulling quantum crystals out of the asteroid at record rates. The aliens had never bothered to learn how the human technology worked. They had just assumed humans would always be there to run it. That assumption was about to cost them dearly. All across the galaxy, the same scene was playing out on dozens of worlds. Human doctors packed up medical equipment and research data. Human engineers dismantled power plants and communication arrays. Human farmers loaded their genetically modified seeds onto transport ships. Everything that made human colonies successful was being packed up and taken home. The aliens watched in growing alarm as they realized how much they had depended on human innovation without ever acknowledging it. On Earth, Admiral Patricia Lai stood in the command center watching the evacuation reports come in. Green lights appeared on her screen as each human settlement reported successful departure. It was the largest movement of people and equipment in human history. Evacuation at 70% complete, reported her aide, Lieutenant Colonel Frank Morris. No major problems so far. The aliens are confused, but not hostile. They don't understand what's happening yet, Admiral Lee said. They will soon enough. Admiral, we're getting requests from several alien governments. They want to know why we're pulling out of joint operations. Tell them the truth. We're going home. And if they ask when we're coming back, Admiral Lai looked at the star map showing all the human colonies that would soon be empty. Tell them. That's up to them. On the final day of the evacuation, Captain Ryan Sullivan watched the last transport ship leave Kepler 442c. The mining station was empty now, just buildings and platforms with no one to run them. The Zephyrian workers stood around looking lost. Ryan felt a moment of sadness. This place had been home for 5 years. But as his ship lifted off from the planet's surface, he felt something else too. Relief and excitement. For the first time in 2 centuries, humanity was going to be alone among the stars. No aliens to placate, no treaties to honor, no condescending voices telling them they were too young and too primitive to matter. It was time to see what humans could accomplish. When they only had to answer to themselves, the galaxy was about to find out what they had lost when they chose arrogance over partnership. 3 weeks after the last human ship left Gaia 7, Dr. Kathara stood in her laboratory staring at dying plants. The green leaves that had been perfect just days before were now turning yellow and brown. The soil that had produced record crops was becoming hard and lifeless. Computer, analyze soil sample 7 alpha, she said to the laboratory system. Analysis complete. Nitrogen levels dropping. Mineral content insufficient. Bacterial balance disrupted. Dr. Catharay's gills fluttered with worry inside her water suit. She had the basic formulas that Dr. Amy Foster had shared with her people. But something was wrong. The treatments that had worked perfectly when humans were here were failing now. She contacted the other Mortesh agricultural stations. The news was the same everywhere. On 7 different worlds, crops were failing. Food that had fed millions of people was rotting in the fields. I don't understand, said Dr. Morthel from the Kepler 186F station. His voice came through the communication. System sounding frightened. We're using the exact same chemicals in the exact same amounts. Why isn't it working? Dr. Kethera pulled up the files that Dr. Foster had given her. They contained detailed information about soil treatment, but as she read them again, she realized something terrible. The formulas were incomplete. They told her what chemicals to use, but not why. They gave her measurements, but not the science. Behind those measurements, the humans had shared their results, but not their understanding. "We need to contact the Galactic Council," Dr. Cathara said. "This is an emergency." Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt where Titan IX floated in space, Supervisor Velenoth was having his own crisis. The quantum crystal extraction had stopped completely. For 3 weeks, his teams had tried to restart the human mining equipment, but nothing worked. "The machines turn on," reported Chief Engineer Zektar, "but they don't extract anything. The crystal formation rate has dropped to almost zero." Velenoth clicked his mandibles in frustration. "What about the human technical manuals?" "We have them, sir, but they don't explain how the resonance calibration works. There are references to dimensional frequency adjustment and quantum field manipulation, but no actual instructions." Velenoth looked out at the asteroid through the station window. For 3 years, human engineer Kyle Davis had worked in this facility. He had been quiet and polite, always fixing problems before anyone else even noticed them. The Zephyrians had barely paid attention to what he did, as long as the crystals kept coming. Now Kyle was gone, and with him went the knowledge of how to keep the most important mining operation in the galaxy running. "How long before the other mining stations run out of crystals?" Velenoth asked. "At current consumption rates, maybe 6 months. After that, faster-than-light travel becomes impossible for civilian ships." The Zephyrian supervisor felt something he had never experienced before: fear of what humans could do by simply not being there. On the other side of the galaxy, the Valdari were discovering their own problems. High Crystalline Morand stood in the navigation center of the trade hub at Proxima Station, looking at star charts that no longer made sense. "Explain to me again why our shipping times have increased," Morand said to the navigation specialist. "The efficient trade routes are gone," replied Subcrystal Gendar. "For 7 years, we used gravitational mapping data provided by human Captain Gani Rivera. His information cut our travel times by 40%, so use the same routes. We tried, but the data was more complex than we realized. Captain Rivera didn't just map safe passages. He calculated gravitational flux variations, stellar wind patterns, and microasteroid positions. Without continuous updates, 3 of our ships have been damaged by debris fields that weren't there last month." Morand's crystal body flashed, dark red with anger. "Where is this Captain Rivera now?" "Gone, like all the humans. And he took all his navigation computers with him." The Valdari trade network was the backbone of galactic commerce. Ships carried goods between thousands of worlds using routes that had been optimized over centuries. But it turned out that the best routes had been optimized by humans, not by the ancient Valdari navigation systems. How long to recalculate the safe passages using our own methods? Several years, high crystalline. And even then, we won't achieve the efficiency levels that human data provided. For the first time in his long life, Morand began to understand that perhaps the humans had been more valuable than anyone had realized. But the worst crisis was happening in the medical facilities. Scattered across dozens of worlds, Dr. Helen Garcia had been working quietly in the background for 8 years, tracking disease patterns and developing treatments for plagues that threatened multiple species. Her early warning system had prevented 3 major outbreaks from spreading across the galaxy. Her research centers had produced vaccines and treatments that saved millions of lives. Most aliens didn't even know her name, but her work kept them healthy. Now the early warning system was offline. The research centers were empty. And Dr. Velinara of the Galactic Health Council was watching disease spread faster than her teams could track it. "The plague on Rigel 7 has jumped to 3 more systems," reported her assistant. "Without the human monitoring stations, we didn't detect the spread until it was too late." Dr. Velinara was a Zephyrian medical specialist who had worked with humans for years. Unlike many of her people, She had respected human medical knowledge. Now she was watching the consequences of their absence. What about the vaccine that Dr. Garcia was developing? The preliminary data is there, but not the complete formula. Human medical research was more advanced than we realized. They were using genetic modification techniques that we don't fully understand. The plague that was spreading had been contained before by human-developed treatments. Without those treatments, it was moving from world to world like wildfire. The administrative level, the Galactic Council, was starting to panic. Emergency sessions were called as reports of failures came in from across the galaxy. The three major species that had dismissed humanity were now facing the collapse of systems they had taken for granted. Queen Speaker Thara of the Zephyrians spoke first. Her voice had lost its usual arrogant tone. The crystal production. Failure affects every species in the galaxy. Without quantum crystals, interstellar commerce will collapse. High Crystalline Moran's crystal body was flashing between red and blue, showing his confusion and anger. Our trade efficiency has dropped 40%. Shipping costs are rising every day. Some of our most profitable routes are no longer safe to travel. Depth Speaker Quayanash of the Mortesh was the most worried of all. Food production is failing on 7 worlds. We have maybe 2 months before famine begins. Our people are already starting to panic. Council Administrator Velkoff, a neutral species that oversaw council meetings, asked the question they were all thinking. How did we not know that humans were so deeply integrated into our infrastructure? The truth was uncomfortable. For years, humans had quietly made themselves useful. They had solved problems that aliens didn't want to deal with. They had improved systems without asking for credit. They had shared their knowledge freely, asking only to be treated with respect. The galaxy had taken their contributions for granted, assuming that humans were just eager to help because they were grateful to be included. No one had realized that human innovation was holding together crucial parts of galactic civilization. What do we do? Asked Queen Speaker Thara. We contact Earth, said Council Administrator Velkoff. We ask them to come back. And if they refuse? The administrator looked around the council chamber at the 3 species that had spent months telling humans they weren't worthy of equal treatment. Then we learned to live with the consequences of our actions. But even as the council planned their approach to Earth, they were discovering that the consequences were worse than they had imagined. On dozens of worlds, systems that had worked perfectly for years were beginning to fail. The galaxy was like a complex machine, and humans had been crucial parts that everyone had overlooked. Now those parts were gone, and the machine was starting to break down. The aliens were finally beginning to understand what they had lost when they chose pride over partnership. But understanding the problem and fixing it were 2 very different things. And somewhere in the Sol system, humanity was discovering what they could accomplish when they weren't spending all their time supporting ungrateful neighbors. 6 months after humanity disappeared from the galaxy, Ambassador Veltar stood at the front of his ship looking at something impossible. The Sol system was completely sealed off. Defense platforms floated in perfect formations around the outer edge of the solar system. Energy barriers shimmered between them like walls made of light. Warning beacons sent the same message over and over. Sol system is closed. Turn back immediately. Veltar was a Zephyrian diplomat who had spent 50 years negotiating with different species. He had never seen anything like this. No species had ever completely isolated themselves from the galaxy. How many defense platforms? He asked his aide. Our sensors detect over 300, sir. But these readings don't match any known human technology. The energy signatures are completely new. Beside Veltar stood High Crystalline Moran of the Valdari and Depth Speaker Quayanash of the Mortesh. 6 months ago, these 3 had been laughing at human requests for equal treatment. Now they were here begging for help. Send the standard diplomatic request, Veltar ordered. The message went out, but the response was immediate and cold. A human voice came through the communication system without any video feed. This is Admiral Patricia Lee, commanding New Gibraltar. Station. Sol system is closed to all alien vessels. State your business and depart. Veltar tried to sound important and official. I am Ambassador Veltar, speaking for the Galactic Council. We request immediate audience with human leadership to discuss urgent matters affecting galactic stability. There was a long pause. When? Admiral Lee spoke again. Her voice was calm but hard. Ambassador Veltar, 6 months ago, you had 3 months to discuss matters with human leadership. You chose to offer us scraps and demand tribute. The discussion period is over. Admiral, please, the situation has changed. We are prepared to offer full membership in the Galactic Council, equal voting rights, and shared technology agreements. Another pause. This one was longer. Those terms were available 6 months ago, Ambassador. The situation has indeed changed. High Crystalline Morand stepped forward, his crystal body flashing desperate blue patterns. Admiral Lee, our trade networks are collapsing. Food production is failing on multiple worlds. Disease is spreading unchecked. People are dying. That is unfortunate, Admiral Lee replied. However, Sol system remains closed. Deaf speaker Quinash spoke next, his voice bubbling with emotion through his translator. Admiral, our people are starving. The agricultural techniques your Dr. Foster developed are failing. We need her help to prevent famine. Dr. Foster is no longer available for consultation, Admiral Lee said. She has been reassigned to other projects. What projects? Veltar demanded. For the first time, there was a hint of amusement in the Admiral's voice. That is classified information, Ambassador. The 3 alien diplomats looked at each other. This was not going the way they had planned. Usually when species had problems, they came to the Galactic Council asking for help. No one had ever told Council representatives that their business was classified. Admiral, Veltar tried again. We understand that humans felt disrespected during the previous negotiations. We are prepared to apologize and offer better terms. Ambassador, let me be very clear, Admiral Lee said. Humans were not disrespected during the previous negotiations. We were told explicitly that we were primitive, young, and unworthy of equal treatment. We were offered the choice between accepting scraps or facing the consequences. We chose a third option, which was we chose to leave, and we chose to stop carrying the galaxy on our backs. The communication ended with a sharp click. The 3 ambassadors stood in their ship, staring at the defense platforms that blocked their way. To Earth. We could force our way through, suggested Morand. Veltar looked at the readings from his weapon systems. Our combined fleets might be able to break through the outer defenses. But look at these energy signatures. This isn't the same human. Technology we knew 6 months ago. He was right. Behind the defense platforms, deep space sensors were detecting massive construction projects throughout the Sol system. New space stations orbited every planet. The asteroid belt was being strip mined on a scale that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships moved between the planets in formations that suggested a military buildup. What have they been doing for 6 months? Quinash wondered. The answer was more disturbing than they could imagine. Without the constant drain of supporting alien civilizations, humanity had turned all their energy inward. Dr. Tony Martinez had accelerated human technological development by decades. Commander Sandra Hill was overseeing industrial projects that made the old human colonies look like toys. Importantly, humans were building something. The aliens couldn't tell what it was, but the construction projects were enormous. Whatever humanity was planning, it was big. Back on Earth, Dr. Amy Foster stood in a laboratory that was 10 times larger than anything she had worked with before. The terraforming technology she had developed for alien worlds was being improved at an incredible rate. "Show me the new atmospheric processor design," she said to her team. Engineer Peter Kim brought up a holographic display. "The Mark 7 can terraform a planet in 2 years instead of 20, and it's completely automated." Amy smiled. When she had been working for the aliens, she had been limited by their safety regulations and their fears about human technology advancing too quickly. Now there were no such limits. How many units can we build? With our current production capacity, maybe 50 per year. Double the production capacity. "Doctor, we don't need 50 terraforming units per year. Humans only have a few dozen worlds." Amy's smile got wider. "Who says we're only terraforming worlds for humans?" Meanwhile, engineer Kyle Davis was working on quantum crystal technology in a facility that made the old alien mining operations look primitive. The crystals that had taken weeks to extract from asteroids were now being grown in laboratory conditions. "Production rate?" asked his supervisor, Dr. Carolyn Brooks. "We can produce more quantum crystals in a month than the entire galaxy used in a year," Kyle replied. "And these are higher quality than anything we ever found in natural formations." Dr. Brooks nodded with satisfaction. "And the new propulsion systems?" "Ready for testing. Ships using our new drives will be 50 times faster than anything currently in the galaxy." On the military side, Admiral Patricia Lee was overseeing the most rapid expansion of defensive capability in human history. The defense platforms around Sol System were just the beginning. "Status report," she asked Commander Frank Morris. "Outer defenses are complete. Inner system fortifications are at 60%. The new shipyards are producing vessels at record rates. And the special projects? Ahead of schedule. Dr. Matt Johnson's energy generation systems are exceeding all expectations. We now have more power available than the rest of the galaxy combined." Admiral Lee looked at the tactical displays showing human space. 6 months ago, humanity had been a small player begging for recognition. Now they were becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. Any word from the alien ambassadors? They're still sitting at the outer perimeter, sending daily requests for meetings. Let them sit. They had their chance to treat us as equals. Now they can wait while we decide what we want to do with them. The truth was that humanity had already decided. They were not going back to being the galaxy's servants. They were not going to spend their energy fixing problems for people who despised them. And they were not going to accept anything less than complete independence. The aliens wanted their help? Fine. But this time, humanity would set the terms. Back at the edge of Sol System, the 3 alien ambassadors were finally beginning to understand the magnitude of their mistake. They had dismissed humans as primitive and unworthy. In response, humans had withdrawn completely and used their freedom to become something far more advanced than anyone had imagined. "We need to report back to the Council," Veltar said finally. "What do we tell them?" asked Morand. Veltar looked one more time at the defense platforms that blocked his way to Earth. "We tell them that we may have made the worst mistake in galactic history." As their ship turned away from Sol System, none of the aliens noticed the small human vessels that had been watching them from the shadows. Humanity was keeping very close track of who came calling, and they were taking notes. 2 years after the failed peace talks, the galaxy had learned to live with its mistakes. The Galactic Council met in emergency session less often now. The crisis had become the new normal. Queen Speaker Zekthara looked older than her years as she addressed the council. "Food production has stabilized at 60% of previous levels. We have avoided widespread famine, but luxury foods are now impossible to obtain. High crystalline Moran's colors were dull and gray. Trade efficiency remains 40% below previous levels. Several unprofitable routes have been abandoned completely. Economic growth has stopped. Deaf speaker Koinash was the most bitter of all. Medical research has fallen back to pre-human levels. We lost a generation of advancement when their doctors left. The three species had learned to survive without human help, but survival was all they could manage. The galaxy that had once been growing and prosperous was now just maintaining itself. Then the message arrived. It came through normal communication channels, but the technology behind it was unlike anything the aliens had seen. The signal was impossibly clear and reached every inhabited world in the galaxy simultaneously. This is Captain Frank Morris of the human exploration vessel Frontier Spirit. Humanity wishes to establish formal diplomatic relations with all species of the galaxy. The alien council members looked at each other in shock. After 2 years of complete silence, humans were finally talking. We will be establishing embassies on neutral worlds throughout the galaxy. Any species wishing to engage in trade or cultural exchange is welcome to make contact through these embassies. Queen Speaker Zekthara felt hope for the first time in 2 years. Maybe the humans were ready to come back and fix the problems their absence had created. But Captain Morris was not finished speaking. Humanity wishes to make clear that we return as an independent power, not as petitioners seeking acceptance. We offer partnership between equals, nothing more and nothing less. The message ended with coordinates for the new human embassies. But before anyone could respond, a second transmission began. This one was from Dr. Carolyn Brooks, speaking from a laboratory that looked more advanced than anything in the galaxy, to address questions about recent technological developments. Humanity wishes to share some of our recent achievements. What followed was a demonstration that left the alien observers speechless. Dr. Brooks showed biotechnology that could cure diseases thought to be incurable. She demonstrated energy generation that could power entire star systems. She displayed manufacturing techniques that could build cities in weeks instead of years. The technology was centuries ahead of anything the galaxy had seen before. These advances were developed during our period of isolation, Dr. Brooks explained calmly. When humanity was no longer required to constantly support alien civilizations, we were free to focus on our own development. Engineer Matt Johnson appeared next, standing in front of a starship that was unlike anything in the galaxy. It was sleek and beautiful, but the energy readings were terrifying. Human vessels are now capable of traveling anywhere in the galaxy, in a matter of days rather than months, he said. Our propulsion technology has advanced beyond current galactic standards. The implications were clear. Humanity had not just survived their isolation. They had used it to become the most technologically advanced species in the galaxy. But the most shocking revelation came last. Ambassador Jake Morrison appeared on screen, looking confident and relaxed. Behind him was a view of space that showed dozens of planets with green continents and blue oceans. During our isolation period, humanity has terraformed 143 worlds, he said casually. Our population has expanded to over 50 billion people. We now control more inhabitable planets than any other species in the galaxy. The alien council members sat in stunned silence. 2 years ago, humans had controlled maybe 30 worlds. Now they had an empire that dwarfed the oldest civilizations. Humanity offers trade agreements and cultural exchange with all species willing to treat us as equals. Ambassador Morrison continued. However, we are no longer available to solve other species' problems for them. Queen Speaker Zekthara found her voice first. Ambassador Morrison, our agricultural systems are still failing. Can Dr. Foster help us repair the damage? Morrison's expression didn't change. Dr. Foster is currently terraforming 12 worlds. simultaneously using techniques that make her previous work look primitive. She is not available for consultation on alien agricultural problems, but our people are still struggling to feed themselves. That is unfortunate. Perhaps the Galactic Council should have considered the consequences before rejecting our offers of partnership. High crystalline Morand flashed desperate blue patterns. Our trade networks need the navigation data that Captain Rivera developed. Is he available? Captain Rivera is exploring new regions of the galaxy beyond current maps. His navigation techniques are now classified military technology. The pattern was clear. Every human expert who had once freely shared their knowledge was now working on projects that benefited humanity alone. A galaxy could not simply call on human expertise whenever they needed help, but Morrison was not completely heartless. However, humanity is willing to consider specific trade agreements. For example, we might be willing to share basic agricultural techniques in exchange for rare elements needed for our expansion projects. What kind of trade terms? Asked Depth Speaker Quayanash. Fair terms between equals. Payment for services. Rendered. Technology exchange rather than one-sided gifts. The idea was revolutionary. For thousands of years, older species had expected younger ones to be grateful for any attention. The concept of actual equality was foreign to most galactic civilizations. And if we refuse these terms? Asked Queen Speaker Zekthara Morrison shrugged. Then you continue as you have for the past 2 years. Humanity will continue expanding and developing independently. Over the following months, different species made different choices. The Mortesh swallowed their pride and signed trade agreements with humanity. Dr. Kethara was amazed to discover that the agricultural techniques humans were now sharing made their previous methods look like Stone Age farming. In exchange, the Mortesh provided rare deep-sea minerals that humans needed for their terraforming projects. Some Zephyrian worlds chose partnership and found their crystal mining operations restored to efficiency levels beyond their previous capabilities. Others refused to deal with humans and watched their economies continue to decline. The Valdari were split. Progressive crystal beings like subcrystal Jandar signed navigation agreements that gave them access to trade routes they had never imagined. Conservative ones like High Crystalline Morand insisted on maintaining their ancient superiority and found themselves increasingly isolated. But the most important change was in how the galaxy viewed humanity. Dr. Lisa Carter, now serving as humanity's chief diplomatic advisor, stood in the embassy on Neutral Nexus Station, the same station where the original peace talks had failed. Through her window, she could see ships from dozens of species waiting in line to request meetings with human representatives. The species that had once dismissed humans as primitive were now hoping for scraps of human technology. Ambassador Morrison is here to see you, her aide announced. Jake Morrison entered looking satisfied but tired. 2 years of rebuilding human civilization had aged him, but he seemed happier than he had been during the original negotiations. How are the new trade agreements working out? Lisa asked. Better than expected. Turns out that when you treat people as equals, they're much more willing to cooperate. And the species that are still refusing to work with us? Jake smiled. They're learning what the galaxy is like without human innovation. Some are changing their minds. Others are too proud to admit they were wrong. Lisa looked out at the waiting ships again. Do you think we did the right thing? Walking away from the peace talks? Jake considered the question seriously. The galaxy wanted to treat us like children begging for allowance. Now they're discovering what we're really capable of when we're treated like adults. Some of them are still struggling with problems we could easily solve, and they can have those solutions as soon as they're willing to pay fair prices for them. We're not running a charity anymore, Lisa. Through the window, they could see a human ship docking at the station. It was one of the new exploration vessels, sleek and powerful. The aliens in the docking bay stopped their work to stare at it with a mixture of fear and admiration. "The galaxy has learned something important," Jake said. "They've learned that being useful and being respected are two different things. For too long, we confused one for the other." Lisa nodded. "And now? Now we're both useful and respected, because we proved we don't need their approval to be successful." The transformation was complete. Humanity had entered the galactic community as supplicants hoping for acceptance. They had been rejected and dismissed. But instead of trying harder to please their critics, they had walked away and built something better. Now they were returning not as servants, but as equals. The galaxy that had once laughed at human ambitions was now learning to live in a universe where humans set their own terms. Some species adapted to this new reality and prospered through genuine partnership. Others clung to their old hay